Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. For those of you who are just joining us, my name is Danielle Bjornstein, and I'm the Executive Director of Beit Ruth for Young Women and Girls at Risk and the moderator of this special event. I want to welcome everyone who has joined us from around the world, South Africa to Rwanda, Somalia to Spain, Switzerland, Cambodia, the Netherlands, Haiti, Trinidad, Taiwan, Russia, Guatemala, the US, Canada, Israel, and so many other places. The attendance of so many of you from literally around the world says so much. With November 25 being the United Nations International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, the timing of this important discussion was very intentional. At the conclusion of this event, we hope you understand two things. One, that violence against women and girls is a real and ongoing crisis. In Israel, 40% of women aged 16 to 48 have suffered partner violence. And according to the UN, 243 million women worldwide, ages 15 to 49, have been subjected to sexual and/or physical violence. Since COVID-19, violence against women has significantly increased everywhere. Secondly, we would like everyone to know about the work that is being done to address this tragic reality now, with the ultimate goal of breaking the cycle of violence for future generations of girls and women. This is an opportunity to learn with and from each other, and to show how coalition building and strategic partnerships can more effectively address this crisis. In fact, it is a key factor. I have the honor of introducing each of our esteemed speakers who will share their perspective about this issue. As we begin, we're also pleased to have friends and colleagues joining us on Facebook Live. And as a reminder, we are recording this event, so please keep your microphones muted. Our chat function is open at the bottom of your screen, and we will address as many questions as possible at the end of the panel. So with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce Ambassador Einat Schlein. Ambassador Schlein is the head of Mashav, Israel's international development agency, and a deputy director general in the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Born and raised in Israel, she joined the Foreign Service as a career diplomat in 1992, specializing in the Middle East region, Israeli-Arab relations and American affairs, and promoting dialogue and understanding in the region. She was posted twice in Jordan, recently as ambassador from 2015 to 2017, and in various senior positions in Washington, D.C. and Boston, as well as in the Israeli Ministry, Foreign Ministry. With that, Ambassador Schlein.
Thank you, Danielle, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you around the world. It is of a great honor to me to be here with you and share with you Mashav's story. The reason that we're all gathered together, of course, is a very important reason. And speaking of violence against women and the campaign to fight it, and in Mashav we have many goals, but women empowerment and eliminating the very aspects of that lead to the condition which many women have to deal with these days still, unfortunately, is something that we look into, that is trying to empower women and working very strongly towards this goal. These goals, of course, are international. I mean, one of the things, before I talk to you about Mashav, I would say that it is important to talk of these issues, especially of this year, as we are celebrating 20 years to the Security Council resolution of 1325, which aims and inspires to including women in all peaceful negotiations and in all, frankly, all junctions, all decision-making tables, which unfortunately are reserved still mainly to men. Yet we believe that this predicament has to change, and it has to change from the grassroots. And it has to start from the youngest age. We need to provide role models, and we need to teach women that they have a full right to claim their place at the table. And Mashav, as Israel's International Development Cooperation Agency, is devoted to this goal among its other main agenda goals. So let me talk a little bit about Mashav. What is Mashav? Mashav is the agency that was funded within the Foreign Ministry already in 1958 by the then Foreign Minister, Mrs. Golda Meir. The aim was sharing with the rest of the developing countries the know-how and technologies which provided the basis for Israel's own rapid development. It was very interesting because comparing to other aid agencies around the world, be it the USAID or the German GIZ or JICA, Israel was actually providing development assistance when it was still a developing country. That is, today, Israel, of course, is a fully developed country, but when Mashav was funded as an active arm of the Israeli Foreign Ministry, we were still a developing country. But we were happy to share our knowledge for various reasons. And I would want to say that the first one, or the basic notion that leads Mashav, is the Jewish principle of Tikkun Olam, healing the world. That is really the guiding spirit behind Mashav's development work. It embodies our profound belief that in our obligation to share our accumulated knowledge and experience in order to improve the life of others. David Ben-Gurion, the founder of one of the founding fathers of Israel and our first prime minister, believed that, I quote, the principles of mutual assistance and equality should also constitute the basis for international relations between people. These must be based on solidarity of all human beings derived from the natural mutual assistance of every sphere of life, the economic, social, and scientific. Mashav promotes a two-pronged approach to development. Firstly, a strong focus on capacity building and technical assistance at the national and community level. And secondly, a focus on implementing development diplomacy on a multilateral level that includes forging partnerships, conducting development dialogues, and bringing expertise to discussion on the global policy level. And that is something that I think we should emphasize upon, because whether we speak of combating violence against women or fighting desertification, we need to come together. We need to stand stronger when we are together, and we need to find a way to combine our efforts in order to get ourselves to a better place. I've been a diplomat for more than 28 years, done some really amazing things. However, I believe that Mashav, as a tool, as a major political tool in the Israeli ministry's toolbox, is doing a lot more than diplomacy. Diplomacy is important, but it actually creates the people-to-people relations between the nations. And when you touch the lives of people, and it doesn't matter if they come to Israel or that we go over there and we talk about agriculture, or we talk of ways of developing new innovative techniques to use green energy, we're touching the lives of the people. And in Mashav, we do all this with one major emphasis in our, as I said, which is at the top of our agenda, doing all these and empowering women. Speaking of agro-business and women empowerment, microfinancing and women empowerment, beehives or growing cattle, and the empowerment of women. We're trying to focus on global needs, and specifically of those of women and girls. And I'm very proud to say that in many ways, we have touched upon the lives of many around the world. And we still have a long way to go, but thinking of the future and imagining a better future for the next generations depends also on creating the platforms for women to take their own place at the table. And that's for this, this is the aim of Mashav, among others, to bring equality and bring women into the, next to the table in order to facilitate a greater public value. And I think I'll stop here and return this to you, Danielle, and to our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, so much for getting us started with your informative and inspiring remarks. And yes, you certainly have touched lives around the globe. Joining us from Mashav is Chava Carey. Chava is the director of the Golda Meir Mashav Carmel International Training Center in Haifa that is part of Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Born in New York to German Holocaust survivors, Chava immigrated to Israel in 1975. She has held various leadership positions at the Carmel Center since 1982 and has traveled to partner countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Eastern Europe, training professionals in the area of NGO management, decision-making, policy and program development, and leadership and project evaluation. Chava has also represented Mashav at many international forums. Chava Carey.
Hello. Thank you very much, Danielle, Ambassador Schlein, dear colleagues, guests, and Mashav alumni. Mashav, Israel's Agency for International Development Cooperation, established the Golda Meir Carmel International Training Center in 1961 to provide professional women and men from developing countries and transitional societies with the necessary tools for socioeconomic development. After 60 years, I was not here from the beginning, so please. We have trained hundreds of thousands of professionals, women and men, working in 5 languages from 147 countries all over the world. We are continuing Golda Meir's vision of gender equality through social justice and human rights for all. Looking back at Israel's history, in the early 1970s, there was a period when women were abused while walking in the streets in the evening. Prime Minister Golda Meir's cabinet suggested placing a curfew on women as a solution. Prime Minister Meir refused and said, "It's the men who are attacking the women. If there is to be a curfew, let the men stay home." This true story and many others are examples of cultural norms of a society. Israel passed the Women's Equal Rights Law in 1951, only 3 years after getting its independence, which guaranteed women protection against gender discrimination and abuse. We know it's an important step to have laws, yet another to enforce them in reality. Violence against women and girls is a problem of enormous proportion. 1 out of every 3 women around the world has been beaten, coerced into sex, or otherwise abused in her lifetime, usually by someone known to her. In Israel, violence against women has risen by 20% in the last year, which puts women and girls in peril. Despite international, regional, and national laws and conventions to prevent violence, and despite states' commitments to punish and eventually eradicate this ugly phenomenon, violence persists, and in some cases, such as in times of crisis, increases. We have just finished the World Women's Leaders Conference on the effects of COVID-19 on women and girls, where there was a unanimous agreement by world and UN leaders that the pandemic possesses immediate and long-term risks to women and girls, as we see over and over again that the world is not an equal place for all its members. We see how the pandemic exacerbates societal inequalities. We are aware that approximately 90 countries were in lockdown during this pandemic, putting women in grave danger of domestic violence. Hotlines are seeing a 3-fold hike in calls. We conduct international training programs, seminars and conferences, and overseas programs on various social and economic topics, including combating violence against women and girls and combating human trafficking. We have trained judges, lawyers, prosecutors, social and health workers, NGOs, community and state leaders. Together with participants, we discuss the topics of prevention, protection, and prosecution. We help establish shelters and hotlines around the world, and many other needed programs and projects through Mashav. We discussed the need and ways to set new societal norms, widen public awareness, and shed light on new initiatives used around the world to combat this phenomenon. We touch on many issues concerning access to justice in court systems, advancing policy and legislation changes, addressing acts of abuse such as female genital mutilation, marital rape, forced marriage, child marriage, which in many countries are widely tolerated and laws rarely enforced. Our courses and conferences allow participants to speak freely about their problems they face in their societies, in their work, and learn about best practices developed in all countries, as well as see Israeli models from women's organizations, NGOs, and government programs. Through our courses at Mashav, participants form a worldwide network of practitioners and policymakers and use this amazing resource upon their return home. Together, we work towards the 2030 development goals, which state that no one should be left behind and no human right ignored. In closing, our goal is to share tools, build partnerships and networks, and instill confidence. And most of all, know that together we can change the world. In closing, a quote from Golda Meir for all of us. Trust yourself, create the kind of self that you will be happy to live with all your life. Make the most of yourself by fanning the tiny inner sparks of possibility into flames of achievement. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Chava. The international reach of Mashav's training and your partnership building is just truly remarkable. Justice Angelina Atabang is Subdirector at the Department of Human Rights and International Cooperation of the Ministry of Justice, Cameroon. Previously, she worked as a judge and prosecutor. She has been active in combating violence against women and has carried out numerous trainings on the subject. Angelina is an alumna of the Leadership and Advocacy for Women in Africa program, and she participated in the Mashav training program focused on violence against women. Justice? Justice Atabang? Have we lost the judge? Okay.
1 second.
Let's look. We are international. There are internet issues.
Looks like she's been disconnected. I think she's probably going to try to go back on.
Okay, so maybe we should move on to Iris Tursky, if that's, I think we should do that, and then we'll go back to the justice. So it is my pleasure to introduce Iris Tursky. Iris is the managing director of Beit Ruth and also a founding staff member. Iris was responsible for setting up the Beit Ruth village in Afula, Israel, which is where Beit Ruth's direct programs and services are provided to at-risk girls ages 13 to 18 years old. She has overseen Beit Ruth's growth since 2006, managing all institutional activities and overseeing Beit Ruth's capital development projects. Iris Tursky, everyone.
Thank you, Danielle. It is really my pleasure to share about Beit Ruth. At Beit Ruth, we work according to two simultaneous and equally important efforts. Our direct program and services that we provide to girls at risk at Beit Ruth Village, and our advocacy and outreach initiative that takes our experience beyond the village to grow our reach and impact toward ending the cycle of violence. Ronit Levari, my colleague, Beit Ruth Director of Advocacy and Outreach, will talk more about our advocacy work later. The Beit Ruth Village is a healing and learning place. Our girls who are ages 13 to 18 are at Beit Ruth by court order. removed from their homes due to physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Our girls are from all religious, cultures, and ethnical backgrounds, and are part of our multicultural landscape of Israel. At the village, girls learn at our on-site specialized high school and consistently achieve beyond what they ever thought they could, even surpassing Israel's national average on matriculation exam. We also have programs like art and music therapy and animal-assisted therapy. These programs help our girls learn to trust and prepare them for the difficult work of overcome complex post-trauma. They receive parental-like care, they eat together, listen to music, celebrate holidays together, learn together. Every decision made in the village, from big to small, is with the best interest of our girls in mind. Currently, we care for approximately 60 girls a year. On average, our girls live in the village for 2.5 years. Some are with us for as long as 5 years. Unfortunately, there is a long waiting list of girls who need our services. So I'm proud to share that in the next few weeks, we plan to begin construction on 2 new on-site residential houses. This will bring us to 5 on-site houses and increase our capacity to care for approximately 90 girls a year. Our long-term plan is to have 10 on-site residential houses and to care for approximately 200 girls each year. Beirut provides everything our girls need, from clothing to food, necessities, health care, everything for school and everyday things, just like any young girl would need. Beirut provides care 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And even during COVID, the Israeli government designated Beirut as an essential organization, and we remained open and running. I have seen our girls during their most difficult days, when they feel they just can't go on, but they can and they do. Many of our alumni serves in the IDF, 4 years of national service work, and they are now mothers themselves. This is truly amazing. No one would have ever believed it. They share pictures with us of them in the army or with their children when they just born. They tell us how being at the village changed their life, and for those who are mothers, the life of their children. You will hear from Raz. She speaks for so many of our girls who find not only a safe haven at Beirut, but also what is possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Iris. And I understand that the justice is back on, but why don't we hear, we'll move on to Roz next and then go back to the justice. And Iris, thank you. Truly transformational and remarkable work, and a great segue as we will now hear from Roz Yona, a Beirut alumna. Roz arrived at Beirut at age 14, where she lived for 2.5 years. Today, Roz is the proud mother of 3 young daughters. And as an emergency room nurse at Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem, a frontline responder during COVID-19. She will share her inspiring story. Roz, welcome.
Hello. Shalom to everyone around the world. First, I want to say how amazing it is to be sitting with Ronit and Iris and with other such distinguished women. As a young girl, I never could have imagined being invited to speak at this kind of event. I will share just a bit about my past because I want to focus more on my present. I come from a family that was full of abuse. My mother was blind to everything that was going on in our home. I ran away and was living on the streets. where I fell into a group of kids who are also lost. I was 13 and could do whatever I wanted, and I did. I abused drugs, and I was being abused as well. I was picked up by social services and put into a homeless shelter, then an institution, and then forced to return back to my abusive home. When life became even worse, my social worker took me away again, but this time to Beth Ruth. The first thing I noticed was the smell. It was like what home should smell like. That was the first time I met Ronit, other staff, and girls who are living at Beth Ruth. That day was the first of 1,000 conversations. We talked about how to deal with hardship, how to see my strengths and weaknesses, how to create a toolbox of skills to rely on things not difficult, and how to manage my hunting memories. I was cared for by women who wanted to see me succeed and grow, and who saw my potential. And more importantly, they wanted me to see it too. From the first moment and for the first time, I felt safe and empowered and saw a future for myself that I could be proud of. I'm not just speaking for myself here. I'm speaking for all of the girls I lived with and all of the girls who are at the Beit Ruth now and all those who will come. All the girls received personal attention. We struggled together and succeeded together. We went to the ocean, the movies, saw Jerusalem for the first time. I participated in art and music and sport. I found things I was good at, and that made me feel good about me. I cannot even describe the love and attention they gave us. We were like a family, a loving, safe place. When I arrived, I didn't trust anybody. But by the time I left, I had learned how to trust again. Most importantly, I learned how to trust myself. Being at Beth Ruth completely changed the direction of my life. Because of Beth Ruth, I finished high school. Then I earned a BA in human resources. And now I'm proud to be an emergency room nurse at Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem. Because my life was saved, I am able to save other lives. I'm even more proud to be the mother of 3 young daughters. But perhaps what I'm most proud of is breaking the cycle of generational abuse. So my daughters will never have to know a life of fear, a life of harm, a life on the streets, and a life that is not worth living. Instead, they will know love. All of this is because of Beth Ruth. From the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
Roz, thank you for your courage and for sharing your story today, truly. Justice Angelina Atambang, again, is the subdirector at the Department of Human Rights and International Cooperation of the Ministry of Justice, Cameroon, and also participated in the Mashav training program focused on violence against women. Justice?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation and hello to everyone. I shall start by giving an overview of violence against women in Cameroon. In Cameroon, violence against women takes many forms in and out of the home. This includes female genital mutilation, breast ironing, child marriages, obnoxious widowhood practices, physical violence, psychological violence, as well as trafficking of women. According to a survey on COVID-19 gender impact on Cameroon, there has been an increase in domestic violence during the pandemic. In response to gender-based violence, the government has taken measures. Cameroon has ratified international human rights treaties relating to violence against women, and at the national level, even though we don't have specific legislation on violence against women, There are provisions, for example, in our penal code and the civil status registration ordinance that allow women to rely on when they are victims of gender-based violence. Other measures adopted include training of relevant stakeholders, sensitization of the public at large, protection of victims, as well as prosecution of offenders. In spite of these measures, challenges persist, which includes gender stereotypes, the prevalence of harmful traditional practices, and inadequate access by women to economic resources. As a women's rights advocate, I'm constantly looking for ways to advance the rights of women. And it is in this context that I spent the whole of the month of February in Haifa in Israel, participating at the international seminar on combating violence against women and girls. It was a wonderful seminar because it brought on board multiple stakeholders, legal professionals, medical professionals, social actors, psychologists, and we were able to interact and learn from each other. I would like to say that I have not only applied what I learned at Haifa in my work, I've also been able to share what I learned with others. Part of my work at the Ministry of Justice involves training on human rights, and this training concerns violence against women as well. And one of the very important things I've learned at Haifa is that if we have to tackle violence against women effectively, we must always look for the root cause. And I've had occasion to apply this. An example is when Plan International contacted the Ministry of Justice asking for experts to sensitize women in impoverished neighborhoods in Yaoundé. So I was taken as an expert on board that project, and we did not only sensitize the women on how to prevent violence, different forms of violence, where to report violence when you're a victim. We also highlighted the importance of the birth certificate and the marriage certificate because we noticed that in those communities, many people did not have such certificates. And in addition, we also showed the women sources where they could be empowered to start income generating activities because lack of access to economic resources was also identified as a problem in that community. In 2016, I carried out independent research on the role that traditional rulers could play as custodians of cultural values in eradicating violence against women. This research was presented at the international conference, at the 10th International Conference on the Advancement in Women's Studies, and that research is published online. And where did I get the inspiration to write this paper? I remember when we were at Haifa, is it Mr. Khan? He presented a paper on Israel, the land and the people, and he emphasized that tradition was something which was very difficult to change. So it really inspired me to write this paper. And I would like to go further to say that when we were at Haifa, there was a whole day that was dedicated to a symposium on global trends in gender and health, gender and sex-specific medicine. On that day, I particularly became more aware of the importance that gender-specific data can play in violence against women. And now at the Ministry of Justice, when we collect information for the writing of our various human rights reports, I am very active in looking for disaggregated data. I would also like to say that there is a speaker, Sarah Bogan, who came to teach us on how to write projects, and it was a fantastic class. It has helped me to be able to put up interesting projects that has helped us to train stakeholders. I would like to say that participating at the Marshall course gave me a whole new perspective on violence against women, and I would like to thank our trainers and say hello to all our Marshall classmates around the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Justice. Certainly hard to hear about the issues in Cameroon, and at the same time inspiring to hear about your work and the real life example of the ripple effect impact of the Mashav training. Truly an example of working together.
Thank you.
Last but not least is Ronit Levari. Ronit is the Director of Advocacy and Outreach for Beit Ruth and a founding staff member. Ronit is a pioneer in the field of gender-based violence in Israel and a sought-after expert and speaker throughout the country. She shares Beit Ruth's on-the-ground best practices to stakeholders and also addresses key policy reforms that focus on the needs of at-risk girls and young women. Ronit's many leadership roles include serving as the Israeli government's foremost authority on women's issues under 2 prime ministers. It is my honor, Ronit Levari.
Thank you, Danielle. It's very special to be here because I know Mashav and have a career for 20 years, since the time that I was serving for 2 prime ministers, and it's really very special event now. I'm sitting with the story of Raz because Raz was very challenging. And if I see her now as a mother, it's really a miracle. I have to say, Raz, that it's 90% it's yours, 10% it's Beit Ruth, because you did the work and we are so proud of you. I am dealing with the issue of violence against women since 1976, when I did the first research, the empirical research in Israel, when I visited and interviewed women in the first shelter for better women in Haifa, and compared them to a group of women that were in a marriage crisis. And I checked what is going on in Israel, actually what is not going on. We went through many, many years, and I believe that the situation changed, but we have a lot to do. And I see here lawyer Aloni Sadovnik, which is who is one of the greatest fighters for victims, because I see myself more as a victimologist than a criminologist. 1 month ago, my brother, who treated the Holocaust survivors in the Netherlands, died 1 month ago. And what I found was that I didn't deal never with the issue of the Holocaust, but he and me, we are all the years dealing with post-trauma victims. And if we look at the girls that we accept in Beit Ruth, most of them are victims of violence in the family, domestic violence. They were abused sexually, emotionally, physically, and sometimes only there were witnesses, which is to a very, very destructive situation. So this is part 1. And in our eyes, to empower them and to give them what was got, this is the way of putting them in a position that they wouldn't be, and they are aware of the specific relationship that we talk about. We talk about possessive partners. We talk about partners that are telling you what to do, where to do, where have you to, and he wouldn't allow you to do things. He's possessive, he's obsessive, and they know it and they study it. But of course, all the process that they go on in Beit Ruth builds a personality that couldn't be like that if they wouldn't go through a really very deep process. I want to say some words because we have here so many representatives from so many countries. Violence against women in the family, in the house, which is supposed to be the most confident place, is the most hidden crime in the world. We have some universal patterns that we can talk about. And as one that deals with this issue for almost 40 years, and I saw, I think, thousands of women dealing with the status of women that are under terror, not always physical terror,
bring more resources to their marriage, to their relationship. They are more, they have more education, they are more stable at work, they have more life skills, but their self-esteem is not very strong. I don't want to blame victims, but I want to say that these women are very strong, and their partners are product of violent families. And therefore, I want to point that we have to talk about child abuse, because these men, most of them, even if they come from high educated families, rich families, it's nothing, they're all over the society, all the kinds, no demographical typical that we can point, but we have to look at the families, and we see dictatorships. If you check the biography of the biggest dictators in history, you will find abuse and very extreme family history. So one point is that we have to talk about child abuse. Girls that are abused continue by self-destructiveness. And we know it in our experience. We talk about eating disorders. We talk about cutting yourself. We talk about depression. And the boys and girls till 12, 13 are abused just the same. Talking about sexual abuse of boys is the biggest taboo in all over the world. But these boys become very frustrated and abusive people. And women are suffering, and men too, from these men. So we have to talk about child abuse, and we have to talk changing men and working with men, young boys and men, about expressing their feelings. Because this is the point. I think that we forgot the men behind. We advance, we empower women, and parallel, we have to work with the men. We have to support role models of men that are confident, that are strong, because violent men are weak men. We have to know it. And therefore, there is a big role to schools. And this is the point that we are doing from our knowledge center. We work with schools, with lawyers, with the police, with all the agencies that are relevant to this issue, how to read the map when the children are very small, to see what is going on there, because sometimes when they come, when she is 15 or 14, 15, we think where everyone was till this point. No one saw her because the girls are quiet, they are invisible. And boys are acting out, they are violent, and they are, shouting, they're being suffering. Their suffering is, we hear it. The girls are silent. So we have to give the tools to all the agencies that are relevant to this issue to find things earlier, and we have to do many, many steps for real change. But I believe that women are the strong part of society, and we as society have to make big changes for giving the peaceful and the quiet houses, and the quiet family will build a healthy and a quiet society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronit, and to all of our panelists for such powerful and informative remarks. Each of you has highlighted in your own way how critical and current this topic is, and the value of all of us working together to end violence against girls and young women. Thank you. Now we have some questions. I know we're getting close to the end, but we have some questions for our panelists. We realize this is a complex subject, but we're asking if You can keep your responses brief if possible. So let's start with Ambassador Schlein. Ambassador Schlein, you work with many partner countries, as we mentioned, Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Eastern Europe. How do you navigate the different cultural systems related to violence against women and girls?
Well, thank you. And I want to use this opportunity also to thank all the other panelists for their very interesting words. So I want to say a few things regarding your question. First of all, this is all about opportunities. In many cases, unfortunately, women and young girls are trapped in abusive environments as they lack independence. So if you empower them, if you actually provide them with ways to support themselves, to gain economic independence, then they are able to leave the probability of them leaving these abusive situations would be greater. And this is applicable in every society and in every culture. Now, let me give you an example, which I was personally involved with a few years ago, where when I was ambassador in Jordan, I was very honored to organize together with Chava Kerry and the team at the Golda Meir Center in Haifa in creating a special course for business entrepreneurship and women empowerment for Jordanian women. Now, these women, which I encountered as I was ambassador in Amman, were living at really the margins of society. They were getting professional training led by the Red Cross of Jordan, and where they were taught very basic courses to support themselves. These were women which were either very, very poor and or divorcees that were deserted by their families and or refugees, women living in extreme poverty, where this center that we coupled with in Amman was providing them with the opportunity to, for some of them to learn how to read and write, but also to gain a profession, be a clerk or a tailor or a beautician or what have you. They would get professional training for 3 or 6 months, and then they would walk away also with tools, either a beauty box for a beautician or a computer, and then 1 year internet subscription for those who wanted to be administrative assistants, and so on and so forth. And these were women really without any future, if they wouldn't go into this training. And with these little toolboxes that they gained with this organization, they could have gotten further. And the most promising ones became either instructors or started their own businesses. And we brought these ladies to Israel. We had 2 courses in 2 years. And we tried to teach them how to channel their talents and create their own micro businesses. Now, this was a very challenging project, not only because of course, the professional aspects of it, but culturally speaking, most of these women have never left Jordan. They've never left the country. I mean, even if they were refugees, they would come from Syria, but they've never been anywhere abroad, and nevertheless, not in a country like Israel. And they were all, as I said, they came of very poor families, and most of them from very conservative backgrounds. And as we were trying to talk them into joining the course, persuading them, we realized that especially for the younger ones, there was no way that their families would let them travel, as this is undignified to travel unaccompanied. So we actually had to work out a system where the head of the center would be the registered chaperone for all of the ladies, because some of the ladies were not able to travel without the commitment to have a chaperone. This is one example. Another example, during the years when we still had courses of Egyptians, in many cases, the Egyptian participants that would have been the participants in these training courses were the women, as they held the households and they carried all the duties of the family farm and so on. Yet they could not travel culturally without the husbands. So we actually had to provide scholarships for both husbands and wives. And when the wives were engaged in the main training for which they came to Israel, we were, Mashav was providing special training slash engagement for the husbands, and which enjoyed the extra tour, as without their presence, women could have not, their wives couldn't have participated. And you know what? We're not here to educate the world. If that is their culture, it's not our place to change it. We would aspire to bring these ladies to a better place. But sometimes, in order to win, you have to be creative, and this is what we've done. And this is one of the things that we do in Mashav, trying to find creative solutions in order to keep the main goal, ahead, and keep our eyes on the ball and on our mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Yes, it certainly sounds like flexibility is a key, knowing the training that you want to give, but needing to be creative in how you provide it and meeting your recipients where they are. So thank you so much. Our next question is, and we'll direct this to Beit Ruth, maybe Iris or Ronit. How is Beit Ruth's work with girls at risk contributing to breaking the cycle of violence?
Okay, I will.
Yeah.
Okay, as we said, and Raz is the best example. The first thing is their self-esteem, their trust that is built step by step. Studying is something very, very important for them. We have girls that were sometimes 2 years out of school. Sometimes 2 years before, they were sitting like little puppets, and no one saw that she is not studying. So when she comes to Beit Ruth, she comes after a trauma from school. And I can tell you that when she starts studying in little groups, and she is helped by volunteers, and it's almost one-to-one, if the teacher gets pregnant, they are very, very angry because they know that she's going home with their baby. So, and we find so many talented girls with studying and art, music, drawing, sport. Their self-esteem becomes so high. It's really amazing. And we see the process, and I'm dealing with the alumni, and I see them as grown-up women, as mothers. It's really amazing what happens with these girls when they get a tailor-made suit in Beit Ruth, and they know tailor-made. This is the sentence they like, because we shape for every girl a special program, and every girl gets what she needs.
Thank you so much, Ronit. It sounds like without intervention and treatment, Beit Ruth's girls at risk become, or are more likely to become, women at risk or victims of domestic violence in women, and that's the breaking of the cycle. Thank you. I think we have time for one more question before we close, and I will tell you, we have captured, there are many, many questions. We will work hard to respond to you and send you emails, and also we'll invite you to reach out to us. But one more question before we are closing comments, and this is to Ambassador Schlein or Chava. In the partner countries with which you work, in Africa and Asia, Latin America, the resources to fight violence against women and girls are different than in other countries. What can Israel offer to leaders in these countries in terms of knowledge and experience that will help build systemic support around this issue in those countries?
I'll let the ambassador answer. Ambassador Schlein, would you like to? Mute.
Sorry, 2 times, I'm just saying, I thought maybe Chava, you'd like to answer us. I just talked for a while. Want to give you the floor as well.
Okay, I just want to say we're talking a lot about differences, and I think Angelina will attest to what I say, that what we usually see in our courses is how much things are similar, and many of our problems are similar, most of them. Maybe we have in Israel more resources to set up more shelters, hotlines, etc. And we show these services to participants, and we have also helped them do many projects abroad. But I think our problems are very much the same, that we all need to tackle the cultural norms, the problems, what Ronit spoke about, teaching boys at an early age that being a man means to be strong and to be respectful of women, and to maybe our word of macho needs to be changed quite a bit in all our societies. Of course, there are differences, but I think there are more similarities than differences. I don't know, maybe Angelina, do you want to add something on that before?
I just want to come back to this issue of shelters. You've talked about some countries having more resources. I think having shelters is one very important issue in combating violence against women. I see one of the participants at the webinar has reminded me about my project, My Shelter, My Hope. So that's one issue which is very important if we want to combat violence against women efficiently. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Justice. And I think what's also clear from all of us watching is that these partnerships are also key in providing the necessary resources to communities everywhere in the world who are looking for support. And I think an example of that is what happened with you, Justice, and what is happening with Beit Ruth, who has the expertise, and then Mashav, who has the platform. And we're able to share our best practices with others, and the ripple effect is just tremendous. So with all that being said, I think we're coming to the end of what I believe has been a remarkable event. I want to thank you to everyone who joined us today. We've had some very special guests, including the Ghana ambassador to Israel, the ambassador Hannah Nyarko, Ghana's first female ambassador to the State of Israel, Susan Ashner, Beit Ruth's founder and chairperson. So thank you again to everyone who joined, to each of our knowledgeable and expert panelists, to people from all over the world who are working so hard every single day to keep girls and young women free from violence, and to those who are part of leading coalitions that strengthen all of our voices. We covered a lot today, and yet it's really only the tip of the iceberg. So we are adding in the chat contact information for the organizations represented here today. Please feel free to reach out to us to continue this important conversation. We will answer the many questions that we have received. Together, we heard the ambassador, we can do so much. Together, we are that much stronger. All of you, you are truly a light unto all nations. Thank you so much, and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you and goodbye and good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone have a
Thank
good
you,
morning.
everybody.
Thank you, Angelina.
Thank you very much.
We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anja.
Thank
Nice
you.
to see a man
So
here.
much.
Some men. Very nice.
Adam,
Very important.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the brilliant presentations. Elizabeth, Cameroon.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it was a great
Amazing.
pleasure.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Have a nice evening.
Yeah, I see